XRP holders need to pay attention and listen right now because this might be one of those moments where people think it's small today, but years down the line, everyone would think it's obvious. Not because of price, but because the environment is changing, the language is changing, the rules are even changing here. And when the rules start changing, this is where big money and smart money starts watching. And this is the biggest mistake that people are making right now. They think when some kind of, good news happens that the price should, appreciate immediately. And that's just not how it works. You often see the term, oh, sell the news. And then you see the market will come down after there's phenomenal news that comes out. And then you see the market just randomly pump sometimes after there's no news whatsoever. This is exactly how the market works. It's everything happening behind the scenes right here. The most impactful things always happen quiet first. And especially during times like this when the price is boring, slow, and, honestly pretty disappointing, that is exactly where people quit. And this is like the worst point for people because they think that this is it. They don't think it's going to go back up. So there's a common terminology that retail investors do, and they buy high when they buy after it's already pumped. And then when it comes down, that's when they sell. They're doing it completely backwards. What you're supposed to do is buy when it's low, where it's currently low right now. Can we go lower? Sure, but I'm just going to continue to buy. And then you sell when it's up. I mean, think about it. If you were a massive institution dealing with billions and even trillions of dollars, and you believed that XRP was going to perform very well in the long term, would you want all of these little retail guys holding and having better positionings than you? No, you would want them to get out. Like, you're like, get out of here. I want it, right? These guys are greedy, right? They want all of it for themselves. So what they are doing right now, they're playing chess while retail is playing checkers. What they're exactly doing is literally suppressing the price. They've been suppressing the price of XRP for years now because, people started to wake up and be like, oh, there's a bubble here for XRP. People are holding. The XRP army is very, very strong. But these institutions and these, quote unquote elites are doing a very, very good job of being able to shake people out, getting the fake holders out, and they're doing a phenomenal job as the price is currently sitting at, what is it right now? $1.42 as we speak. If I was an institution and I wanted to shake people out, I would want them to feel, not confident. I would want them to feel uncertain. I would want them to feel tired and basically just completely exhausted to the point where they just give up their back. Because the easiest way to take positions is not through crashes, it's through exhaustion. Like, I grew up in wrestling, right? The easiest way for me to get a win in wrestling is not by just going straight for the headlock. No, that's going to gas myself out. I'm going to get tired. The easiest way is to be able to maneuver around and make sure that, feeling this guy out and be like, all right, this guy's not going to last the whole entire round with me. My cardio is good, right? So picture in the institutions, they're like, we have the capital, obviously. They have the intelligence. They have the insight. Have that chip on your shoulder. You're like, all right, this guy's not lasting with me 3 rounds. So I'm going to gas him out. Once he's tired, then I get my takedown. That's exactly what the institutions are doing in a wrestling perspective, where they're like basically wrestling with retail. They're like, you know what? We're going to let this drag out until the third period, and we're going to take this all the way. If we have to go to overtime, we will. No problem. We're going to keep on suppressing this price until you sell. And that comes with sideways movement, delays. And that's when people, retail holders, regular everyday people, say, you know what, that's it. I've had enough. I am done with this thing. I am done with XRP. I'm tired of waiting. It's never going to the moon. And that's exactly how strong hand institutions take the positions from weak hand retail panic investors. And I often call them panic selling worms because, that's basically what they are. When you really think about it, what is a worm? A worm is something that has, no backbone, first of all. They have no eyes. They're blind, no ears. They can't hear. And they're just squirming around hoping that, a big hawk doesn't come up and eat them. That's exactly what the worms are doing. This is the ordinary retail investor that doesn't do the research versus a big institution dealing with billions and trillions of dollars. That's the big hawk coming down to eat them. And look, at the end of the day, I'm a retail investor, but at least I'm like not a worm. I read, I hear, right? And I actually have a mind of my own. I have a backbone. Now let's zoom out for a second. We're living in a world now here in 2026 where we have artificial intelligence that are potentially taking jobs. We have, digital assets that are now, some of them are commodities. XRP is one of those commodities, but we have tokenization. We have so many things to look forward to for crypto adoption. And there's currently a very strong demand for faster global payments. And that's where like the current banking system comes into the picture, where it's slow, it's fragmented, it's delayed, it's expensive. expensive, it's outdated, right? And it needs, the state-of-the-art crypto technology to really come in and replace that system. And that's the exact utility model for XRP. That's exactly what Ripple has built for years now. XRP does not succeed just on becoming popular. XRP succeeds based on the actual use case behind it. I've talked about this in the past. XRP is not going to move from retail investors. Retail investors are never going to move the price of XRP. The only way the price of XRP is going to genuinely move to like big numbers is through institutional use case and institutional capital and institutional liquidity. XRP is a bridge for moving value, a layer that reduces friction between systems. It's not supposed to be, something that everyone talks about. It's supposed to be something that works in the background, but actually plays the biggest role of them all. And here's why this matters so important right now is because as we see all these regulations coming in for crypto, and we have the Clarity Act, which should be coming very, very soon, institutions are looking at this, like it's candy, right? They're like, oh, they're getting more comfortable. They're getting, more capital that's going to start flowing in, and they're just going to have a field day. And look, they're not going to do it overnight. We're not going to see the market, automatically just flip the switch like a lot of people say. I had Jay Klaver on my podcast last week, and he even said, like, look, there is no such thing as flip the switch. There's a lot of things that, have to come in. It's a step-by-step process instead of just actually taking a light switch and flipping it and sending to $10,000. No, there's real-world events that actually have to take place here in order to see that price appreciation for XRP and many other cryptos out there. Sometimes the signal shows up before the move, and that's where most people get shaken out because so many retail investors think of this in their mind. They're like, if this is real, if XRP is actually taking over, then the price will already be high. That's where they get it wrong. History shows the complete opposite in almost every single situation ever. Whenever there's been a major generational wealth transfer, it always was super, super frustrating in the beginning. So can XRP, have some more fake breakouts and more delays? Absolutely it can, and I think it will. Based on my chart analysis, I think that will probably be moving sideways until maybe June of 2026, depending on when we do get that Clarity Act. But just solely based on chart analysis, especially on the daily and the weekly time frames, we can see that there's a descending wedge that's been going on since last July of 2025, and it's a yearly high of 366, now at like 142, 143, whatever the case may be. We have this descending wedge that is a gap that's closing. I think it's June 15th, if I stand corrected. June 15th is when that gap closes. So we should see that breakout, at least before then, or, within that time frame. I'm going to say like mid-June is when I believe that XRP is going to have that true breakout. And that actually might be the biggest part of it. The market doesn't just test your chart analysis to see if you're right or wrong. No, instead, it also tests, your mental fortitude. The market will test your long-term conviction. Are you going to keep on holding if the prices keep dipping, or are you going to panic sell? The market is going to test to see where your patience level is. Where is your mental headspace at? And that all comes back to what we were just saying is how institutions, they're playing chess while these retail investors are literally playing checkers. They're like, waiting to die. These institutions have been around for decades and decades, generations passed down. They know the knowledge. And look, I'm not saying you have to go head over to Wall Street and become an institutional investor, but you should actually start to have this institutional mindset and understand the mind games that they play within this market, because this market's dirty. This market's tough. If you're not in the right mental headspace, you're going to drive yourself crazy. I've been in crypto for, almost 7 years now, and there's been times where I wanted to just punch a wall. I have punched walls from it. I've driven myself crazy. I've lost so much money, and there's just so many things in crypto that will make you crazy if your mental space is not in check. So that's why it's super important to make sure that that mental space is in check and that you understand the institutional game before even getting into the game. So here's the real picture. Don't let the current price and the slow price could take you off of the long-term picture of what's truly going on here. Don't think that there's lack of progress or lack of adoption just because the price is currently low. Don't assume that silence means that nothing is happening. Sometimes, or actually most of the time, silence is when the most is happening. And most importantly, when in doubt, zoom out, okay? Do not let short-term emotion affect your long-term investment. Because when XRP truly does become a massive role in the future of finance, this current phase of the market, of the boring phase, the phase where everything's silent and the prices are low, you're going to look back and laugh at it and say that was actually like the best thing that could have ever happened. This was the best gift, the best opportunity that I could have ever had. And then you're going to have other people that are going to say to themselves, damn, I really wish I should have held on. I could have been a millionaire if I just held through the conviction. So you got to ask yourself this, are we watching weakness or are we watching a potential setup? Because the biggest shifts don't start loud, they start quietly. So guys, make sure you guys are subscribing and hitting that like button because I'm bringing you guys daily XRP videos every single day. I'll see you guys in the next one.